I'm going to introduce our two fabulous speakers. So we have two speakers with experience and expertise in different areas. We have Nadine Ekta, who's a project manager at the Syrian Futures Project at the Al-Walid Center at the University of Edinburgh. And we have Antonella, Sorace, Professor of Developmental Linguistics and founding director of Bilingualism Matters. But before we get into their discussion and their conversation, it would be good if you guys want to introduce yourselves a little bit. Nadine, do you want to tell us a bit more about your background, maybe?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Eva, for organizing this, and Christy and everyone. And thanks, everyone, for joining us, celebrating the first day of the Refugee Week, which I couldn't really imagine that we would be able to celebrate after all the preparation which we tried to organize with the Bilingualism Matters and other groups within Edinburgh or even the UK. My name is Nadine Ekta. I work as a outreach and project coordinator for the Al-Walid Center, and I'm leading the Syrian Futures Project to help Syrian refugees access higher education and employment. And I work with groups to help them raise their confidence, integrate into the society, and learn more about Scotland and help and support them with their education.
Perfect, thank you. Now, Antonella, do you want to say something?
Yes, hope you can hear me.
I can't hear you. Oh, yes, now. Okay.
Yes, you can hear me. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eva. Thank you, Nadine. Thank you, everybody at Bilingualism Matters, and everybody for joining us. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm a native speaker of Italian. I was born and raised in Italy, but at this point, I've lived in Scotland for most of my life. I came here as a student, and then I ended up having a career here. And I do research on bilingualism at all ages, so over the lifespan. And I'm interested in knowing what happens when people have more than one language in their brain. And I founded Bilingualism Matters, which is a center for public engagement, which means that we try to make research accessible to people in all sectors of society, so that they can make decisions that are based on what is known about bilingualism, so facts at the moment, rather than misconceptions. And we'll come back to the misconceptions. And we have a huge international network for Bilingualism Matters. At this point, we have 27 branches in 3 continents. So we have a very good basis for comparing the experience of being bilingual, the experience of dealing with bilingualism, the experience of doing policy about bilingualism, the experience of being a parent in a bilingual family, a teacher in a multilingual classroom, and so on and so forth. So I think I'll stop here, and look forward to our conversation.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you both. Thanks for being here. Thanks for agreeing to do this. I can't wait to hear your discussion. I'm going to switch off now. I'm not going to be part of the discussion, but I'll come back in like 20, 25 minutes or so, roughly. I'll see how your conversation goes and come back at some point. But just a reminder for everyone that you can ask questions based on things that Antonella and Nadine are talking about. Feel free to put the questions in the Q&A box immediately, and I'll read them out to Antonella and Nadine later on the webinar. Okay, cool. Well then, I think I'm just gonna switch off, so take it away.
Okay, so Nadine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. So I think it's now up to you, maybe we can start by saying that we both have experience of raising bilingual children, right, in our families. But your experience is more recent than mine, because my children are not children anymore, but they did grow up with two languages, Italian and English, and they still speak only Italian to me, which I'm very, very happy about, even if they obviously have their own lives now. But maybe you can start by saying something about your own experience of raising bilingual children.
Yeah, so I came to the UK, that's 11 years ago or 12 years ago, and I did my master here in intercultural business communication and TESOL, and I'm a mom of two children, which I'm trying to help them to speak our own mother tongue language in Arabic at home, and at the same time to help them to learn, like, not to help them, but like support them at school at the same time. And I have experience working with the Syrian families here, but at the same time, on our discussion and even thinking about the session today, I always think about the family who are really struggling about the idea which language to teach their children or to use at home. I got so many friends or like from the Syrian families who arrived recently, trying to ask if it's better for the moms and the dad to try to speak English at home, so they support their children to be able to go to school and speak English. I was at some point in the same position because my child, he was a bit late to speak in general Arabic and English, and he was going to go to primary one. And I had some moments, even I'm sure that it's best to speak the mother tongue at home. And I know all of these strategies, and I learned that through in my university and all of these things. But as a mom, and when you are thinking about your child's involvement, integration into school, you have that moment when you think that, shall I get my children to speak English, watch English TV only, and expose them to English language only, so they will be able to cope with school? Or shall I keep Arabic at home, watch Arabic TV cartoons, and they will pick up the language? I struggled a lot when my child was going to go to primary one. Now somehow know what was the best, but I really had so many moments. But maybe from your experience as an academic researcher, you can give me more details or more information. What do you think of these families who are not really sure, taking into consideration, even if I speak English, but I won't be really perfect speaking, pronouncing the right pronunciation. So I'm not really teaching my child English, proper English.
Yes, well, thank you very much, because that is, you know, you got right into the issue, right? The fact that raising bilingual children can be a challenge for many parents, right? It's not always easy. It's not always, you know, a nice walk. So there are decisions to be made and challenges to meet. And what you were talking about also sounds familiar to me, because although my husband is a native speaker of English, you know, he could, for example, help our children, you know, with their homework, and I chose not to do it because helping them with their homework would have implied doing it in English, and I wanted to be consistent, you know, with speaking Italian. Now, what you were saying, you know, it's a very common perception and something that many parents actually worry about. You know, is it a problem if I speak my mother tongue, knowing that my child has to integrate in an English-speaking society and school, and they have to work well in English, they have to function well in the other language? Should I make an effort, you know, to speak more English and less of my mother tongue? And what we know, both from research, certainly from research, but also from my own experience, as I said in the past, is that there's really no reason to think that parents who stop speaking their home language are doing their child a favor. In fact, it's always better to try and continue to speak the home language. Clearly, the children have to hear enough English to learn English, but not from the parents, and not from the parents who are not native speakers of English, because continuing to speak and to hear the home language can actually be an advantage for learning English eventually. So clearly a child has to learn enough English, but not from the parents. But this is sometimes difficult, you know, for a parent to accept, because, as you said, sometimes bilingual children are a little bit later in beginning to speak, or in doing things that a monolingual, a child who speaks only one language, is already doing. I remember my children speaking in very short sentences, there's just one word, in English, when their friends were already chatting away in full sentences. And so, you know, that can be a source of worry for a parent. But then my children caught up, and children usually do catch up in due course. So yes, it's important to know that there can be slight delays, but the slight delay doesn't mean that they won't be functioning well in English and functioning well at school at the end.
Yeah. When my child was in that position, we decided at the end that we speak Arabic only at home, and I support my child with his homeworks, and my husband, he speaks Arabic only. And until my son, he was convinced that my husband doesn't speak English. He's only speaks Arabic.
Actually, I like that, because that reminds me again, you know, my younger son at a certain point, he was convinced that I couldn't speak English. Which is, I guess I was doing something right. There's something, I don't know. Not anyway. Yes, so that's another, yeah, not unusual experience.
Yeah, as we are talking about little children, and maybe I'm more talking about primary school now, but if I want to reflect on my work, like I work with the Syrian futures with all ages, with families, children, teenagers, but more focused, let's say, that age between 15 to 25 or 30. And in one occasion, we were talking about learning the language, bilingual, and all of these things. We talked about self-confidence. And I don't know if this is something, one of the things which there's a difference between the little children who come when they are, like, I'm talking about refugees or any children who move to another country and they have to speak a new language. And then there's a difference between the primary school and the other younger one, the teenagers, and how this affects their self-confidence and more about their interaction and integration into the society. And so, because I had one occasion when I got some of the teenagers which I work with, so much, like we had a workshop, and when we started to reflect about their integration and interaction with the Scottish or international friends, and all of them, they talked about that we used to have friends. It's easier when we speak our own language, and we used to have very good high marks when we used to be in our own country. But now, because of the language, we are the ones who are not able to cope or follow up with our education very well. So other people look into us as we are less or lower than their own level into language or understanding the subjects and following up with the good marks and all of these things.
Yes, I mean, I can certainly understand that, and we have plenty of examples, you know, as I said, from the people we talk to. I mean, a teenager obviously has already a life, an image of themselves, a social life that is rooted in their mother tongue. So for them, it's more difficult to go through that change and to integrate, you know, in another society, in another language. Not because they can't learn the language. I mean, we have to be careful about this, you know. A teenager can learn the language. It's not that, you know, the older you get, you know, necessarily the worse you become at learning the new language. A teenager can learn the language very well, but clearly a teenager already has, as we said, you know, a life, an image of themselves, friends, as you said, and so on. And so it might be it might be more difficult. They're also more self-conscious about what people think about them and so on, compared to a younger child.
Prejudice about failing or doing mistakes.
Yes,
But
exactly.
other children, like little children, they don't care. They care about playing, getting the idea, and that's it.
That's right. That's right. From that point of view, it's easier for a young child. Yeah, definitely. But it's not impossible for a teenager. But we have to understand that they need to be supported, you know, in a different way, precisely because they are at a different stage of their lives. Yeah. Can I just ask what kind of attitudes have you found in schools and you know, towards bilingualism and bilingualism in your language? I mean, have you ever faced negative attitudes?
So I can't really generalize. I can't say it's this, but I had some occasions when I've seen so many schools supporting bilingual children and like helping and supporting them. So if I'm talking about my own experience as a mom raising my child, when he used to be primary 2 or 3, the teacher, she really supported my son, especially when he was all the time, in a specific period of time, he was always challenging me that I can speak English, I'm able to communicate with my friends, so I don't need to speak Arabic. You understand English, so I can speak to you. When I wanted him to learn the language, to be like, it's another more credit for you to speak 2 languages. You will be more able to communicate with your siblings, my family, my friends. Even in our situation, we can't go back to Syria, we can't meet our family. It's like it's so difficult, but at the same time it's like he has to learn this. So the school where he used to be, it's Dean Park Primary School, and they used to support him on so many occasions. They asked me to go to this school and to give the children taster session about in Arabic, so he feels more proud about his own identity and his own language. And he had the opportunity as well to do a presentation about Arabic. In other schools, I couldn't. Like when he moved to other schools, I tried to present the same idea. I tried to be involved with the school with this, but I didn't get the support. Right. And he felt more disappointed because he asked me for that, and he felt that this is something he's proud of. So he asked me to go again, and I tried, but at the same time, the school didn't really support that side of it. Yeah. And from my own work experience, it's again different. So some of the teenagers I work with, they always talk about their teachers, supervisors in high school. They support them, understand that, and even their peers, friends, they support them and understand that they are coming to a new country. Everything is different. They will need more time to understand things. When other ones, because they are got so many negative attitudes, it turned up that they don't want to go to school, they don't want to interact, they don't want to speak because they are not really getting the right support from the school or from their friends.
Yes, I mean, again, you know, this is a situation that we see quite often. Although I must say, you know, I've been doing this public engagement work for more than, well, nearly 12 years now. And I would say, you know, the situation hasn't changed completely, but there is, you know, some improvement. But there's still a lot of variation, you know, from one school to the other, from one family to the other. Yeah. And I think, you know, we should still be doing, you know, a lot of work on, first of all, making teachers and parents aware that keeping the home language can be an advantage. And so it's good not only because you keep the roots of your culture and the, you know, links with your country and your family and so on, but because it can be advantageous also from other points of view, you know, so from the point of view of the brain and how we think and how we behave. So all these things, you know, we can't expect people to know them, but, you know, we have to make them accessible. And this is what we're doing with Bilingualism Matters. But another thing that I think we didn't do very much at the beginning, but we're doing much more of now, is really talking to children and children and teenagers and making them aware so not just the parents and the teachers, so the adults, but also the children themselves, making them proud of the fact that they know another language. And that's so important. And we get so, you know, really positive reactions, you know, from children who maybe even if they live in a positive environment, they've never been actually told explicitly, well, look, you know you know more than one language, and you can do this and you can do that, and yeah, you're really lucky. Yeah, and that is very, very important. So this is all work that we can do collectively, we can do together. Yeah. Getting children involved in feeling proud about their language and their language.
Exactly. So that's one of the things why I decided to go to schools, to encourage my son, to get him that feeling that he's special, this is his idea, he should like to feel proud of talking about it and sharing with his friends, rather than trying to speak English only, and he doesn't want at the beginning to learn Arabic as well. Do you have any advice how parents can be involved with the schools to support their children learning process? So when they are learning a topic or something in English, if they can do parallel work or something similar at home to support the same when they are learning concepts or special new words or a new topic, so they can do something similar at home for their own mother tongue?
Well, you know, that's clearly, you know, there isn't, I think, you know, a strategy that works for all families, you know, because all families are different, and, you know, the composition of the families are different, the languages are different, and so on. So I would say, well, creating an environment where, you know, the language is heard from other people as well, not just from the parents, you know, making children aware, especially younger children. An older child, you know, already knows that a language is spoken by many people and so on. But a younger child, you know, making them aware that this is not just the family language, it's a language that lots of people use. It's a language that you can express anything in. You can say exactly the same things, you know, that you can say in the other language. And so it's not that, you know, it's a language that is only restricted to certain topics or to certain people or to certain environments. So it's a language that you can use to express anything. I think that is you can't do it for all languages, you know, because there are languages for which there aren't very many resources, or there aren't very many people even, you know. We deal with people with families, you know, where the languages are really minority in the sense that they're not spoken by very many people. Yeah. And so the idea, what we normally say, try to create a community. Okay, you know, in some cases there is a community already, wonderful. So children can hear the language from different people. And we know from research that hearing different people speaking in different ways, it's very important for learning and keeping the language alive and active. But for some languages it's easier than for others. So
yeah, with the Arabic language, I think, and with the refugee community now, I think the challenge is more with the written language and more the structure of the language and the grammar of the Arabic language. Because if we are talking about the teenagers or the children who used to live in Syria that 7 years ago, and then they moved to another city, so you would expect a big gap in their school and their education. Yes. So it's not only, so this is my experience when I'm working with them, and when we do chatting, or when I ask them to do any task and send me their piece of writing in Arabic, I started to see that all of them are really good with the speaking, but with the writing I started to realize, okay, yes, these mistakes are because they have been out of school for a long time. And now they are getting the educational support in English, but it's not about the Arabic language. So again, we started to realize the gap. And as talking about the community, there are some schools, but I'm not really sure about other languages, if there is any proper school supported through the council or even by local bilingual speakers or something, but I'm really hoping that this is something we need to find how we can fill in that gap with their education and learning for their own mother tongue language.
Yes. Just one thing I wanted to say while I was listening to you, the importance of literacy, in the minority language, in the family language. Again, this is a very desirable. It's not always easy to implement. Because for some languages, there aren't very many books, for example, or resources that can help the acquisition of literacy. Certainly, for learning to read is easier. Learning to read and write is a different matter. And I can see even in a language like Italian that has, the same writing system as English, and so on. So from certain points of view, it's easier. But my children never learned to write in Italian because they never went to school in Italy. And I didn't really prioritize writing. Reading, yes, from the very beginning. We had plenty of books. I always read stories in Italian and so on. So reading wasn't a problem. Writing, no, because writing, you have to do it. You have to practice writing. You can't just improvise it, right? But it can be done. It can be acquired later on. So, even having a basis of literacy in just in terms of reading is a very good basis for, then when the opportunity arises to acquire maybe full literacy in, reading and writing.
Yeah, I'm more relieved now. No pressure, we have time.
Yes. So yes. What else? Oh, I can see
Eva.
I can see Eva.
Surprise! I'm back.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks so much. That was really, really interesting. Very, very interesting discussion points. But we've been getting quite a few questions.
Imagine.
So I think we're just gonna, you actually already answered one while you were discussing the points. So that's very helpful. I think let's just dive right in because these are questions from the community and from the participants. And the first question, you can not only rely on your expertise, but also, I guess, on your own experiences with raising bilingual children, because the first question is, do you have any suggestions for things to do at home to keep the home language? Like, what do you do at home with the children, for example, to actually practice and maintain?
Nadine, would you like to start or shall I?
Okay, you go, and then I can add if there's something.
Okay, so are we talking about normal times or are we talking about these special times?
There is a Corona question later on.
Exactly. So. Because I happened to give a talk last week about languages in lockdown because, this is a very special situation, even if we're moving out of lockdown gradually. But for 3 months, families were stuck at home and children didn't go to school. And that had apparently, well, not surprisingly, a very good effect on the home languages because families spent more time together. And the home languages really improved. I kept hearing stories from parents that, who found that their children were much more willing to speak the home language and so on. That clearly came with the worry of, well, what would that damage my children's English? And what happens when and if the time comes when children, will have to go back to school and, so does the fact that the home language has improved somehow damage the English? And the short answer is no. As I said, bilingualism is never the same level in both languages. The levels in the two languages change according to the situations, the experience, the people, and so on. So this is a good time for mother tongues and home languages. Excellent. Let's value this good time. The time will come when English will take over again and children will adapt to that. and they move again back, you know, in the direction of maybe more English compared to the home language. There's nothing surprising about this. But more in general, without lockdown, how do you keep your language alive? Well, as we were saying before with Nadine, you know, by speaking them. So, you know, creating a community. If there isn't a community, trying to create a community where the children, you know, are aware that the language is obviously, you know, something that many people use. Creating resources, particularly for younger children. A teenager already knows, you know, that the language is spoken by lots of people, but a young child may not realize that. So using as many resources as possible and trying to give the child the idea that, yeah, as I said before, the home language is just like English and you can say anything in it. And maybe there are special things that you can only say in the home language with your family, you know, some emotional things, for example, that's fine. And that's good for the language and for the perception of the language.
Yeah. Nadine, do you have any suggestions or any experiences what you're doing with your kids?
So yeah, talking about this period of time specifically, when we have more time to socialize with my children, we started to watch TV series, which is very old Syrian TV series, and I found out that it's an opportunity for me not only for them to speak the language and speak different people speaking, but at the same time they are learning the culture, because I found out myself that I need to explain sometimes like translate and explain the situation and the culture, why this word have been said here, what does that mean. When the series, it gives like life about like a family and doing daily routine of different things, celebration and or different occasions. So I found out that there was an opportunity for me to talk about where I used to live, how I used to live, and the culture and things which we used to do. And the other thing, talking about coronavirus, I was over the moon last week when my daughter, for the first time, she said the word in Arabic, and then she said like, Mommy, what does it mean this in English? How do you say this in English? And it's my first time this question since 10 years ago that they ask me a word in Arabic and they want to know that in English, because it's always the other way around. They know it in English and they ask about the Arabic.
Success. Nice. Great. So the next question is probably something that all bilinguals have experienced at some point, because the next question is, before coming here, we were worried about learning English, and now we're here, we are worried about maintaining Arabic. So what do we do? And I think you already answered that with like building a community on everything, but do you have any other, like maybe not even only for families or like, you know, parents with children, but what do individuals do? Antonella, do you want to start? Yeah?
Sorry,
yeah, I think
okay.
I think it's, as we already talked about, having our own community, supporting the children at school in both languages. So one of the things which I try to do when my children started to go to school, I used to go to ask the teacher about the topic they are learning at school and try to bring similar resources in Arabic, or at least to try to find out something similar. So when they are learning about the solar system, we did the same things in Arabic. So we had the solar system and the pictures and writing about all of these things in Arabic, and then the same in English. I know it takes too long time. At the moment, I feel guilty all the time because I'm not able to do the same when I'm working full time. But I think like it's one of the things which we can try to work at school and try to support as much as we can, creating the community, socializing with family and friends. So this is one of the things, again, I'm trying to do is because they are in the lockdown, so they want to speak to someone. So I try to call my family and they only speak Arabic. So my children have to communicate with my siblings, my nephews, and they speak Arabic only. So they want to speak to someone. It's Arabic only, they have to survive.
yeah, very, very good motivation, you know, that increases, you know, again, you know, the status of the language and the motivation that children have. I liked your idea of, you know, exploring the same topics, you know, that are done at school in Arabic, you know, in the home language, and that's a great idea, you know, because it really gives, you know, children, well, first of all, you know, the opportunity to continue to practice and speak the home language, but also, again, you know, the idea that yes, you can talk about these things in both languages, and
yeah, because it's you always notice that whatsoever the mother tongue language and the English, they are always better with the English, expressing themselves, learning about topic, about so many conversation and discussion, when their own language or their mother tongue, it's more like about more everyday language and discussion. So when you are talking about more scientific or more talking about books, it's more in English rather than in Arabic. So we tried to have that balance on a good level of both languages at the same time.
But you would probably both agree that the main aspect for this is probably initiative. You have to want to use both languages, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. And again, you know, I think some families don't really, you know, see the need to do that, and yeah, we try to motivate families to do that. I mean, again, you know, there's no strategy that works, you know, that you can apply to all families in the same way, but there are general principles that you can adjust, you know, in different ways to different families. And you know, the general principle is, yeah, keep the language going, continue to speak the language, make it relevant to your kids, give them an opportunity to use it, you know, not just as you said, Nadine, in the family domain, in the domain of, you know, emotions and family communication, but in other domains like science, like you know, school subjects that are normally done in English. That's an excellent idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Do you would you suggest the same approach to a family that is raising trilingual kids, or is that pretty much the same? Do the same strategies apply?
Can I say something about trilingualism? We get a lot of questions about trilingualism, and the first question is, can a family or can a child deal with 3 languages? And the short answer is yes. Yes, they can deal with 3 languages. But the next question is, do we expect the same level for the 3 languages? And the answer is no, probably not. Although again, there are differences, you know, from family to family. But because we know that, you know, a language needs to be heard and practiced in sufficient amounts to continue to be, you know, really prominent in a family's life. Well, if you have 3 languages in the family, there's clearly less time and less opportunities to devote to each of these languages. So it's absolutely normal that maybe you go through phases in which 2 of these languages are ahead and 1 is left behind. Then, you know, there may be a next phase where the language that was originally behind takes over. So as we said, you know, the relative competence in a bilingual or trilingual languages is never exactly the same. It depends on the opportunities, it depends on the experience. And so, it's first certainly possible to have 3 active languages without expecting them to be the same at the same level.
Okay, great. Another question we got from a participant is, what are children's attitudes towards the languages they speak? And I'm guessing that's very, very individual, so I don't know if you can actually generalize. But do you maybe have experiences, or do you have an answer about children's attitudes?
Nadine, would you like to start? Or...
It's okay, you go.
Well, we were talking about, attitudes, and the importance of talking to children so that, we make them proud. We make them happy of, being bilingual or trilingual or whatever, in their particular languages. Sometimes, the surrounding environment is not so supportive, or maybe it's just indifferent. They don't care about bilingualism. They only emphasize English, and so a child doesn't necessarily see the advantage of being bilingual or keeping the home language. And let's remember that children don't really like being different from the others. They don't like, then they appreciate standing out in particular ways, but when they're younger, they just don't want to stand out, or being made different, or being made feel different. So I think this is part of talking to them and in changing the attitudes of people around them. It doesn't happen in 24 hours. It takes a long time, but we can all work on this, and if we all collaboratively work on this, then eventually we can see things changing.
Yeah, Nadine, do you have anything to add about maybe your kids' attitude?
Yeah, so it's really challenging for the children, and it's challenging for the families as well, because we, like, as a mom, you got so many moments when you feel like sad for your child, when you know that they are struggling at school, because they are different in so many different aspects, not only language, even if they speak English as mother tongue. And when my son started, or until now, when he speaks Arabic, I can say, like, I can hear like a Scottish person speaking Arabic. I can't really hear an Arabic child speaking Arabic. But at the same time, it's really challenging at school. And they got some moments when, at the beginning especially, he always challenged us, why I need to speak that language, why I need to learn Arabic, why I have to do this and that. But because of, we try to keep explaining, like, it's another language for you, and it's good for your ID to communicate, for your career in the future, and so on. And he got the right support from the school. And I really appreciate so many conversations between his teacher and him. And on one occasion, his teacher was Scottish Lebanese. And she told him, I'm so sad because I don't speak Arabic. I feel sad because my dad let me speak English only, and he didn't try and push me to speak Arabic. So that's the moment when it started to do more changes, and building the community, communicating with friends who speak Arabic, it really makes a big difference. So he feels I'm not the only one. There are so many other friends who are in the same situation. They are learning 2 languages. They are enjoying sometimes, and they are not enjoying sometimes. But at the same time, like, it's not only I'm not the only person.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So next question. Maybe Nadine, you want to go first with this one. What do you think about the role of the older sibling in bilingualism? Because one of our participants said that anecdotally, it's often said that it's easier maybe with the first child to maintain the whole one parent, one language maybe, but that it gets harder with every child that comes after. So I don't know what your experience is. What language do your kids speak amongst each other?
When they are by their own, they speak English.
There you go.
So I have to keep an eye and my ear with them all the time. And I have to say, like, Arabic all the time at home. So yeah, the same for my daughter. Like, I need all the time to emphasize that she has to speak Arabic. But at the same time, to be honest, it was easier for me because she picked up the language while I'm talking with my son, and she picked up from the TV because he's already there. So he was already watching the TV. So she used to do the same. When I'm teaching him Arabic, now she started like, I want to do Arabic as well. I want to learn Arabic as well. And this motivates her that it's not only him, he's learning Arabic, I would like to learn. And luckily enough, I got my mother-in-law. She lives near us, so that helped us and supported us, to be honest, to help them to pick up the language, because they know that she's only speaks Arabic. Even she wants to take the opportunity to learn the language from them. But again, we say like, no, 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 it's only Arabic. You have to help them to learn the language. So when they learn, I think we had that conversation one time before that, when children, when they play together, they try to speak English because it's the play language, maybe they call it for them. So they play and enjoy, and sometimes she tells me, this is only in English, this song only in English, or this kind of play when she's playing family or something. No, this is only English. But we try to say like all the games you can do them in Arabic and English. So it's not only this one. But at the end, I think it depends on the children.
I have some experience of that too, because in my family, my two sons are 4 years apart. And when my second son was born, my first son was already beginning, I mean, you know, he was still very, very active in Italian, but his English was improving, and he was, you know, speaking more and more English, you know, at nursery and so on. So I don't know how I managed to do this, but this is what I did. And I have no expectation that it would work for everybody. But I took my older son apart and I said, look, you know, you and I are the only people who can teach Italian to your brother. You and I, because daddy can speak it, but not as well as we do. And so I made him feel important. I made him feel, you know, that he was really playing a very important role. And I can tell you that for a number of years, certainly at the beginning, they only spoke Italian to one another. Then, predictably, they switched to English. But at that point, their Italian was very well established. And it was their, you know, secret language, the language in which they communicated, you know, very well. So I don't know, that was the strategy that worked for me. And I have no expectation that it would work for everybody. But it's not an uncommon situation where older siblings clearly, you know, are more integrated in the school language, the community language. And so they're less willing to speak the home language to their younger sibling. And it's not uncommon for younger siblings to be less bilingual than their older siblings. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. And now that you both mentioned that your children used both languages, we got a question about translanguaging. Translanguaging, should that be encouraged? And maybe, Antonella, can you give a brief definition of what that is actually? I don't know if everybody knows.
Well, you know, I wouldn't want to give an official definition of translanguaging, you know, because it's not my area of research. But one, you know, easy definition of translanguaging is not keeping the two languages separate. Okay, so, you know, not being afraid of using both languages in the same message, in the same situation. Now, let's remember that this is a very normal way of handling more than one language in many places in the world. So, you know, language separation is one way, you know, but language mixing and switching, you know, in many bilingual communities, that is absolutely normal. So we're not talking about anything really strange. But the idea that people should do translanguaging is that, you know, there's no, if they feel confident and comfortable, you know, by doing that, translanguaging is not bad for bilingualism. It's not, you know, it doesn't lead to confusion. It actually leads to more ability to express what you want to say in both languages. So again, you know, I'm not talking from a, you know, from a prescriptive point of view, you know, I think that, you know, if within a family people feel more comfortable going from one language to the other, that is not, you know, out of the question. And that means, you know, keeping the home language alive because you go in and out of it. So other families, you know, would prefer to keep them separate. And that can work too. So as I said, you know, there isn't an ideal method that works in all situations.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very interesting how language, and especially if, you know, if you have a bilingual family in a multilingual country, the situation is completely different than it would be in a rather monolingual environment, right?
Well, in monolingual environments, you know, the separation of the two languages is in many cases the norm. And unfortunately, we see that for minority languages, doesn't have, you know, for local minority languages, that is not very effective, because the minority language is only spoken at home, and the majority language, the community language, is spoken outside the home. So the status of the community language is definitely higher than the status of the family language. Which is not, you know, encouraging, you know, as we said before, for a young person. So
yeah, it's very interesting. So we have so many more questions. I think we only have time for one more. So since we're still in the middle of the corona situation, maybe we can come back to that topic now. One question we got: are you hopeful that the increased familiarity with online communities, like what we're doing now, and connections coming out of the pandemic will help long-term with opportunities for language exposure, for example? So I don't know what your experiences are like during Corona, if you were more active online to keep in touch with other people, and I don't know, do you want to maybe elaborate on your experiences, Nadine?
So the question is about the exposure to other languages, right?
Yeah, and if maybe Corona helped with this.
So I can't really answer if it helped or not, but I can say, like, for example, for me, we within the Syrian Futures, we do befriending. We have the befriending scheme where we match Syrian community with the students from the University of Edinburgh to do like a language exchange or to speak English only. So if we have a new teenagers or new families who just arrived, they have little English, so we match them with the Arabic learners, so they have the opportunity to have like swap the language. Or if the Syrian families who have been here for a long time, we match them with English speaker only. And we are doing this online now, so we moved everything to be online. We have a translation and interpreting service as well, if someone have any documents which need to be translated, or if they need an interpreter over the phone to help them with anything. So we are doing this online as well. And we have more opportunity, to be honest, like to have English classes online. And luckily enough, we used to do it within Edinburgh only, but because of the coronavirus, we found out, okay, if we are doing this online, we can open it up to other refugees within the UK. So now we are doing this within the UK. And next month we are launching internationally because of the coronavirus as well.
Oh.
We can help more refugees in camps within Turkey, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, because so many people approaching us and offer their help and support and say we would like to help and support during this period of time. So we are setting up English classes to refugees in camps. So but taking into consideration, so many people are frustrated because of the situation. They feel a bit isolated. They feel the unknown of their future. So they feel uncomfortable using the online, and they would like to meet people and socialize. So in some occasions, they feel like they are a bit down of communicating. And then we have another. So even with the teenagers, which I used to work with, we are doing online sessions just to catch up with them. And it's always frustration about, I don't know what I'm gonna do next. Am I going to university? Shall I apply to the college, do a placement, do this, do that? So the unknown is uncertainty about their future is a bit frustrating, and a little bit for some of them putting them down to keep connected or to keep going. But I think this is normal to all of us. All of us, we go through these phases during this time.
Yeah, definitely. Antonella, do you have?
Yeah, I have very little to add to that. I think Nadine said it very well. I think, you know, there are two aspects of the situation. You know, on the one hand, there are many more connections, you know, that have been made or formed online, and that's very good, right? I mean, you know, we you know, you can see it in many environments, you know, I mean, even academically. I've been giving talks, you know, all over the world without traveling. So it is possible, you know, to keep in touch, you know, and to do, you know, to keep communication going. And many of these channels have multiplied because of the lockdown and because of the situation. So that's good. And it would be good if they stayed, you know, that way, if the situation goes back to normal. Because as you were saying, you know, communicating online is not the same as communicating in person or having real interactions. It's just not the same. So from the point of view of languages, you know, it's definitely good, you know, to be exposed, you know, to more sources of languages online and so on. But nothing can replace the real human interaction that we're all missing very much in a situation like this. And we hope we can go back to before too long.
Yeah, I think that's a nice note to end on, I think. Nothing can replace human interaction. Totally agree. And I'm ready to go back to normal, whatever normal really means after this. So yeah, it's 3 o'clock, so I think we're ready to wrap it up. So thank you very much, Antonella and Nadine, for doing this, for joining us. Thank you very much. A round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone who came and who participated and who asked great questions as well. Now, we are recording this session, so we are trying to upload it to our website, and we will share the link with anyone who, you know, who attended. And you can share that with people who you think might be interested and who weren't able to join maybe. So keep an eye on our social media. We will post it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That is @bilingumatters. So follow us. There's also quite a few questions that we haven't been able to answer just because we're running out of time. So we will try to answer them individually. We haven't quite decided how. Just also keep an eye on our social media because we will be trying to answer all of the questions that we got today. Once you leave, before you now leave, when you close this session, a feedback survey on Google Forms will open automatically, and we'd be really grateful if you could take a minute to do this. It's not going to take long, but the feedback for us is very, very helpful. So please do that. And one last thing, and then I'm going to stop talking very soon. We do have one more event coming up on Friday. It's going to be a similar event to this. It's also going to be a conversation between Bilingualism Matters and one of our collaborators, that is Dr. Katerina Strani, who is an associate professor of cultural studies at Heriot-Watt University. And we'll be discussing more questions from the community. She'll be talking a lot about language and identity, and in light of recent events, also racism. So it's going to be a really, really interesting session. You can still sign up for that on Eventbrite. So it will be really nice if you want to join us for that one. But yeah, other than that, I think I don't have anything left to say. So thank you very much for everyone attending. And yeah, maybe we'll see you on Friday. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.